When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. Fred Rogers. 3 years ago today, a gunman walked into Planned Parenthood here in Colorado Springs and opened fire. There were multiple victims, including Officer Swayze of UCCS PD. I worked at Penrose ER at the time, and we received all the victims, both officers and civilians, from the attack. The strength, courage, and professionalism of CSPD, AMR, CSFD, and my coworkers at Penrose ER working to save those that serve us will be something I never forget. I will always remember the helpers and what they did that day. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the program director at UpaDowna. He is also an EMT at UC Health, a landscape and adventure photographer, and finally, today's guest is an outdoor enthusiast. Today's guest is Andy Brinkman. Andy, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks, Quentin. I'm pretty stoked to be here today. Thanks for having me.
For sure, man. So, Andy, we're going to just jump right into things with a little bit of a warm-up. The first question that I have for you today is, how do you start your day?
It really depends on the day. If I'm working in the ER, I usually have to be in there by 7. So I'm up around 4:35.
Okay.
Try and get some small workouts in, do some sit-ups, push-ups, things like that before I gotta get my day started, just to get the blood moving.
For sure.
If it's a day off and I don't have anything going on in the morning, I really like sleep. So
Absolutely, man.
I'm gonna take advantage of it, and I just kind of go with the flow of the day, really, where it takes me. I'm not a structured person as far as day goes, but some meditation, a little yoga if I can. Again, some just working out. But if I'm going climbing, I'm going climbing. If I'm going running, I'm going running. There's really no rhyme or reason to my madness.
For sure. No, that's cool. And being an EMT, like it would kind of be hard, I think, for an individual to have a lot of structure within their life, because like the life of an EMT, the life of a police officer, firefighter, it's so unpredictable. So,
controlled chaos.
Yeah, for sure. So I can definitely see where the morning kind of just like wake up and do whatever is it's kind of what you're feeling that day. So all right. So the second question, Andy, that I have for you is there a favorite book or book that you gift often? And again, if there is more than one, please feel free to share.
I guess I'd have to go with my favorite book is going to be The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama.
Okay, cool.
I spent some time in Nepal last year, and while I was trekking and climbing out there, I carried that book with me and read it the whole time I was out there. And just an absolutely great story. It's just about people treating people well, how to live a happy life, which I think a lot of people look for but don't really know how to do.
Right, absolutely. Cool. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, so the third question is, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you have found a lot of value in throughout your life?
I guess as far as a favorite quote, I've got one. It's from a famous climber that passed away a while ago in an avalanche, but he just absolutely loved the mountains, and it speaks to me because the mountains are really my happy place. Like that's where I go to be. That's where I go to feel whole. And the quote is real simple. It's by a climber named Alex Lowe. And the quote is, "There are two kinds of climbers: those who climb because their heart sings when they're in the mountains, and all the rest." And I just have that special feeling when I'm up there, when I'm up amongst the rocks and the snow, and even in a suffer fest like that, and my heart just feels happy when I'm up there. So that quote just has always spoke to me so much. Cool.
Now I want to talk about the mountains a little bit, Andy, because obviously the mountains is kind of one of the attractions for some people to move out to Colorado, and there's just something, and I'm not really, I don't go up in the mountains. Yeah, I've done a little bit of hiking, but I don't spend a lot of time up there. But just knowing that they're there and being able to see them every day, there's just something like magical and special about them for me personally, and I think a lot of people within the state. So for you personally, one of my previous guests, he's a Colorado Personal Fitness on Instagram. He'll take his dogs, he'll take some friends and stuff, take his vehicle up there, and we'll spend a weekend or 5-6 days in a row just kind of like up in the mountains doing whatever he does. And I know for him the mountains play a huge part of his life, very powerful impact in his life. So what I'm trying to say and get at, Andy, is like, I know you mentioned like their specialty and all that, but just kind of like when you're in the mountains, is it like an escape? You said it's kind of like your happy place. Like, just what do the mountains do for you personally? The
best way I can describe it, I guess I would say, is they make me feel comfortable in my own skin.
Okay.
Being up there, I don't know, maybe it's an empath piece of me or something like that, but I get an energy from the mountains. Like, cool. It's a calming energy, but also it makes you test yourself as well. Being up there, the mountains humble you quite a bit. So being up there, it's where I can be my best self, basically.
Cool.
So being up there is just that's my happy place.
Right, yeah, no, for sure.
It's where I can test myself and where I can be humbled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, do you spend a lot of time in the mountains just kind of by yourself and stuff, or?
I do quite a bit of hiking up in the mountains by myself, which isn't always the safest, but I'm very competent in my skills up there, so I feel safe being up there by myself. Mm-hmm. I enjoy being up there with friends though too. It's it brings you together. It's a place where you guys can be, depending on which mountain you're on, be alone, mm-hmm. and just that camaraderie that the mountains build too, especially when you're doing a hard climb with a friend or doing a hard hike with a friend. It's you get those bonds built, and you are under stress when you're doing it, so it really builds that concrete a lot quicker. It's almost like a quick dry, like,
for sure
you can trust those people that you're with.
Right, yeah. Now, when you're up there like by yourself and stuff, is that really a time for you to kind of do a lot of maybe some deep thinking and deep reflection and just some deep interpersonal work that is so necessary for us as human beings, but a lot of us don't do that because our lives are so crazy and chaotic. So is that kind of a place where you can kind of do some of that inner work, inner healing, whatever you need at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of refer to it as moving meditation almost.
I like that.
I get, you get going on a trail, or you get going up a climb, or you get going up a couloir or anything like that, and you become almost hyper-focused a little bit, depending, of course, on the danger level.
Right,
and all
yeah,
that.
Yeah, for sure.
But even on easy hikes up on the 14ers, like, it's a good place to just get in a rhythm and shut your mind down or be able to focus on something.
Beautiful, yeah.
And yeah, you can really, it's a chance for me to look inward, and it's a chance for me, like I said, to test myself almost and see, push up my pace, or take the harder route, or feel the pain of, trying to suck wind at 14,000 feet on a 40-degree slope. It's
right.
The pain's almost healing a little bit in something like that, because you're feeling, you're really just present in your body.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I enjoy the most out of it. It really just allows me to be present and in the moment, and that's the most healing thing for me.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that the mountains will humble you, and they're humbling. Obviously, we all know like what it means to be humbled and kind of the word of humble. But for you personally, again, Andy, like what is so humbling about the mountains, or how do they humble you? Is it kind of like that test of fitness and mental fortitude, or is it something else?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a huge part of it. Is the mountains can throw anything at you, and if they don't want you to be up there that day, they will make it known.
Right.
It's. You see what's happening on Everest right now, and the climbers that are dying up there, and it's almost like the mountain's angry. It's like, there's too many of you on here. The mountain will let you know when it's not wanting to be up there, and that humbling piece comes from the power of it.
Right.
And it's quick to strike back too. I had a buddy of mine and I were up on Pikes Peak earlier this year, climbing the Little Italy Couloir. On a beautiful bluebird day, we were real confident, climbing real well, and we were going to ski and snowboard down the couloir. We got a little cocky, got a little got a little ahead of ourselves and didn't read the conditions right, and my friend slid 800 feet down the couloir and almost died. Could have got killed real easy. And unfortunately, in that same area, a few weeks later, there was a young man that was killed from Colorado Springs up in that same area.
Right.
So that as well. The mount, up there, you may think that your ego may be way up high, and that mountain can knock that down to ankle level real quick.
Yeah.
And it makes you just focus more and more attentive on what's in front of you, and not everything else in the outside world.
Yeah, that like you said earlier, that hyper focus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think for me personally, it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's pretty simple for me to get hyper focused within my life on certain tasks that I'm passionate about or I know that I need to get done. I think that hyper focus is a tool in our toolbox as human beings that is very, very valuable at times in life, because I think a lot of times we have so much going on, and like I mentioned earlier, life can get so crazy and so wild and so unpredictable that we never practice that hyper focus. We kind of got our hands here and we're just all over the place, and it's just like you're just trying to make it through the day and all that type of stuff. So I really feel, Andy, that this ability to hyper focus and to get into that hyper focus mode again is very valuable, and it's very important as a human being. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, life throws situations at you that you need that hyper focus.
Right.
Especially working as like an EMT.
Exactly.
Like you're in these chaotic situations, whether it was in the field when I was working on the ambulance or in the ER at Penrose, which is a trauma center. When you're in those situations, you need to be focused, and you need to be able to just have muscle memory and have this happen.
Right.
You can't fumble, because time could cost somebody their lives.
Absolutely, yeah.
But even just for regular people that don't have to deal with that type of chaos, like being able to hyper focus on something, whether it's your partner that needs you at that moment, or whether it's just for you to get outside and get away from everything and just focus on one thing to shut down all the noise, like it's a good reset. I think it really resets you.
Cool. I'm glad we were able to touch on that, because that's something that I've actually, I think it was yesterday or not too long ago. I'm a writer, and I write every day, and one of the things I wrote about just here recently was being able to block out the noise, and again, that's a very valuable tool in the toolbox as a human being, and it kind of correlates to being hyper focused, because like, again, there's so much noise, there's so much going on, inner and outer, and if we can't block out the noise, if we can't step into that hyper focus, then I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish what we could accomplish. So awesome stuff to start off. So Andy, the last question I have for you in regards to the warm-up is, do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast?
I got a couple out there that I listen to quite often. The first one, Dirtbag Diaries, which is all about outdoor failures and conquests, basically. They just focus on really interesting stories. Young people kayaking the Grand Canyon. Things that went wrong, stories about climbs that went wrong. And then the other one that I listen to quite a bit is the Sharp End from American Alpine Club. And that's focused more on accidents in the Alpine. And that's a very educational tool, and also makes you, you don't get in the mountains for a little while, you become complacent. Hearing about these incidents and hearing about these different things that happen up there, it brings you back to reality, and it lets you, it just allows you to be more aware. I think. Beautiful.
Awesome, man. Okay, so Andy, we're gonna just dive into your backstory. So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, where did you grow up? Kind of what did those earlier years for Andy look like? Kind of the home environment. Were you involved in sports, extracurricular activities? Before we turned on the mic, you had mentioned, you did spend quite a bit of time, I believe, kind of being free range and being outside. So just maybe talk about the importance of that growing up, and then we'll just kind of continue to move along in regards to your evolution from there. So
cool. So yeah, I was born on a cold winter. No, I'm not going to start off. No, so I grew up, I was born in Iowa, but I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, Mitchell, South Dakota. Maybe you've heard of the world's only corn palace. It's a claim to fame. But yeah, it's a small town, about 14,000 people, Midwest small town. It's great people there. Very more of a rural city, a lot of ranches, a lot of farms. Pheasant hunting is huge out there. That's my dad introduced me to the outdoors real early. And in South Dakota, it's pretty plentiful. You got the Missouri River a few miles away. the pheasant hunting. The Black Hills are down the road too, so there's a lot of action out there. But I grew up, I was an awkward kid. Okay. Wasn't popular. Wasn't,
right, yeah.
It's kind of blended in a little bit. I played football in high school, and I actually pole vaulted, which is kind of a strange. Not a lot. I haven't talked to a lot of people that have pole vaulted. But yeah, growing up in Mitchell, it was very much that small town high school lifestyle. Right. Basketball and wrestling were kings in Mitchell. Yep. We have a friend of mine from high school made it big and went on to win a few titles. Mike Miller.
There you go, yeah.
Skinny himself.
Right.
Yeah, so he, Mitchell is a very talented city for the size of it. They kick out a lot of great athletes. And it's a very athletic-minded city for the Midwest, too.
Right.
Our football team wasn't that great, but that's okay. We made it to the playoffs a couple of times. But, growing up in Mitchell, it was a good place, and I'm happy to be from there.
For sure,
It instilled a lot of values in me. The Midwestern hard work ethic. And just being good to people. Mm-hmm. Like, people there, I think the most important thing that I took away from Mitchell is people are nice to each other.
Right,
and they help out their neighbors. And you don't see that in the bigger cities as much. So that was one thing that I was super happy to take away from there.
Cool. Now, did you have brothers, sisters, things like that?
Or? So I have one sister, and actually I have three sisters, two stepsisters, and my little sister Ashley. And then my mom and dad. They all live back in South Dakota still.
Okay. Cool.
So in Mitchell or T or a couple of little cities around there. And then I've got a couple of nephews, 3 nephews that are awesome, and I'm always excited to see them when I get back.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then my stepmom, my stepdad. Yeah. So a big family.
Right.
So my sister's a graphic designer back there, and she does some amazing work. And her husband as well he's a welder, so he's an artist in his own.
Yeah,
take
for sure,
there with that too. So, so my family, we moved to. My parents split up when I was younger, which kind of changed some things up in my life a little bit when I was younger. But they're both happy now with who they have, and I have a good relationship with them. And they're supportive of me. I guess, for lack of better terms, living the dirtbag lifestyle a little bit. Right. Yeah. So they don't always understand it, but they appreciate it. And like me going over to Nepal for 5 weeks and climbing over there, like they understood why I went over there, and they understood why I wanted to be up in those mountains. Even if my mom was a nervous wreck the whole time while I was doing it, she still supported me. So sure. I came from a really supportive family, which is nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned earlier that you grew up kind of as an awkward kid. Can you just expound on that a little bit? And was there something? Because let's be real. All of us when we're growing up, we're all trying to figure ourselves out. We're all trying to fit into this clique or that clique. Where you're struggling trying to be cool and just trying to find your place in the world. And a lot of us, I'm still working on that. You know what I mean? Like my 20s were spent exploring myself, exploring different places within the United States, and just trying to figure some things out. And I'm almost 32, and I'm still trying to figure things out. So it's kind of we're never really done doing all that. But when we're younger, myself being a school teacher, I see this firsthand with junior high kids and high school kids. So kind of that awkwardness. What did that look like for you, if you don't mind kind of unpacking that a little bit? And then just some of those struggles that you had, because we all have struggles when we're kids, and then we get into the teenage years and our 20s. As adults, we have struggles, we have issues. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that awkwardness and just how you kind of had to try to find yourself in the world, what did that look like?
Right, yeah. No, it's like you said, you trying to figure yourself out. Right. And I'm 38. I'm still trying to figure myself out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think until we're 8, until we're put in the ground,
sure.
That's a normal thing. In high school, I never really found that spot to fit in.
Right.
I kind of floated a little bit, and I took on some friends who I thought were friends but weren't really my friends. Took advantage of me, didn't treat me as much as I deserve. Like I actually deserve to be treated that well. So yeah, it was an awkward time. Like it went through a lot, especially my parents' divorce as well. So that made it even tougher. But yeah, it's really I was trying to find my group when, in all actuality, I should have been trying to figure out myself.
For sure.
Like I wanted to be, everybody wants to be part of the popular crowd,
right? Of course.
All of that. So you tried, and then it doesn't always work out that way, and that's fine. Looking back on it, high school is such a short period of time, and when you're in it, that's your whole world.
Absolutely.
But looking back at it now, it's almost laughable, like how hard we try for something that doesn't have a lot of, as far as fitting into the right groups, that has no bearing on later on in your life.
For sure.
But again, you don't have that full hindsight either when you're in high school.
Right.
So yeah, it was just an awkward time, just trying to find a good group of friends, and luckily I did. I found some genuinely good people there by the time I graduated, and it made high school a little bit easier. But yeah, going through a tough time in high school is normal, and anybody that looks like they have it all put together is just has a really good cover.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean. Just it's really finding yourself, and that was where I struggled at, is to figure out my identity in high school. So I say awkward in the point where it just didn't feel like I got the most out of it as what I could, like looking back now. I should have taken advantage of some different opportunities and things like that. But also it turned me into who I am today, and I wouldn't change a thing about it either.
Right.
Because who knows where I'd be if things would have gone different, So it's something I look back on. Don't regret making the decisions I did in high school, because we were teenagers. We made horrible decisions. But also, I'm glad that I learned from it and just didn't write it off either.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you bring up, Andy, is, this thought process of, instead of trying to fit in and trying to find yourself, maybe in a group or a clique or, somebody or something else, but really trying to find yourself. And that's something, I really didn't gain that concept or that understanding of all that until, mid-20s, late 20s. And as a teacher, that's something I really want to bring into my classroom and bring into the public education sector is, trying to educate these young kids in this next generation on, hey, don't be focused on everything and everybody else, but focus on yourself first and finding yourself, your passion, laying that foundation in your life, so then you can go out in the world and quote unquote change or impact the world. Because you listen to all these high school graduation speeches and college graduation speeches, and you hear all these things like, oh, we're gonna go out and change the world and do all this stuff. And at that age, again, most of us, we don't even know who we are. If we don't know who we are, we're not going to be able to really fully impact anybody else. So I think you bring up a great point, and it's like, dude, I was the same thing. It's like most of us, 99.9% of us, don't know who we are in high school. We don't know who we are in college. We're trying to explore and discover, and I think all of that's important. But if there's some adults in our lives as young people that maybe are gently guiding us in that direction of like, hey, think about who you are. What are you passionate about? Let's dig a little bit deeper, as opposed to just like studying, passing some tests, going to college, and getting a degree or whatever. I think that would be really valuable. Don't you think that would be awesome to bring into the next generation?
Absolutely. And I'm really big on happiness. I think people need to find happiness is something that you control in yourself.
Absolutely.
And in those situations, like you're in high school and you're trying to fit in, you're trying to find that validation from somebody else. And even if they give you that validation, you're not going to be truly happy. So figuring out who you are, figuring out what makes you happy, that's what truly makes you happy. So if there was a way that we could focus these kids on finding what makes them truly happy without worrying what other people think about what makes them happy, I think that would make huge strides for a lot of these kids. Because we had a program with UpaDowna. We did a stand-up paddleboarding, and we had a kid that came out. And one of the teachers from that class literally had tears in her eyes, and she was saying, this is the first time I've seen him smile in 2 years being out on these paddleboards. Who knew that this kid, that's what made him happy, is being out on the paddleboard in the water. But taking that time to figure out what makes you happy and finding that thing or that hobby, or just being the type of person that you want to be, finding that, I think, and unlocking that's what's going to unlock the happiness in you. You shouldn't need somebody else to make you happy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think what you're kind of talking about, and I kind of mentioned it too just a minute ago, is that the importance of exploration in our lives, because again, our public educational system is kind of pushing us in kind of one direction. There's kind of one track to becoming successful. Again, it's kind of going to college, getting your degree, and then kind of settling in, doing all this stuff. And it's like, it's really, really important and valuable in our lives to have the opportunity to explore. And I think that's why you see a lot of kids maybe post-college or in their late teens, post-high school, into the early 20s, they might take a year off from kind of life or whatever and go explore overseas or something. And some of my guests previously on the podcast have done that, and I feel like that has been a very pivotal point in their lives. So for you, Andy, do you, and I already know what you're going to say, but I want you just to maybe share your thoughts and feelings a little bit more and unpack a little bit more in regards to the importance of, for a young person, but also as an adult, to have that time in our lives to explore.
Oh yeah, I mean it's extremely important, and it doesn't have to be a trip halfway around the world to explore.
Right?
Either.
Yeah.
You know, there's I went and saw probably the greatest climber in the world, Conrad Anker, speak up in Boulder one day, and he was talking about exploring and adventure, and he's like, you need to take the time to explore, just like you said. And he goes, it doesn't have to be climbing Everest, it doesn't have to be paddling the Nile River in a kayak. He's like, go in your backyard and explore. He's like, it's what you make of it. And he's like, you'll be surprised what you find just walking around your block, walking a trail through your park. Even, and especially here, we're so lucky because we have beautiful stuff in our backyard. But just getting out and exploring, it's not about what you find, it's about how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And I think people need to get out and explore. Explore their city, explore their state, explore their country, explore the world, because there's a lot of different ways to live out there, and there's not one certain, cookie cutter, white picket fence, 2-car garage, 2.5 kids way that's going to work for everybody, So you need to go out and figure out what works for you. And also, if you find what works for you and then you find something different, don't be afraid to change. Like, I think that's part of exploring, is taking on something new and seeing if it works for you.
Cool.
So yeah, absolutely. That was one thing I didn't do out of high school. I went straight to college out of high school. I worked for a fire department for a little while, then went to college, but I didn't take that time to explore. Now I'm making up for it in my later years.
For sure, and I'm assuming that the time that you spend in the mountains is a big part of that exploration for you as a grown man, correct?
Oh, absolutely, and it's because it's a freeing thing. Like, you're on your own. It's yourself out there. And as far as exploring that, yeah, I'm a curious person too. Like, I want my mind to be stimulated, whether it's how do I get up this route or look at how beautiful this landscape is in front of me. I want to be stimulated as well. And that's part of the exploration, is the excitement, not knowing what's around the corner, I think. So, yeah, it's a huge piece for me.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so you just mentioned college. So we kind of touched on kind of the earlier years, the family dynamics and things of that nature, kind of junior high, high school age. So you said, I think you just mentioned something about fire department. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. And then you went off to college. So why don't you share about the fire department experience, college, what'd you study, kind of what did the college years look like for you? And then we'll move on from there.
So I was lucky enough, my high school had an amazing program called World of Work. So we had this block scheduling. So every other day, for 4 hours a day, you could go and shadow any place you wanted to. You picked a spot, and that's where you were there after the semester. Well, as a kid growing up, I was always scared of blood and people getting hurt. I saw a really traumatic thing when I was younger. It always scared me. So when I found out about this opportunity, I'm like, I want to push myself. So I signed up for the fire department, which goes into everything. They see the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So I signed up to do that. And after 2 years of doing the World of Work with them, I got my EMT, and I was lucky enough to get hired on with them in Mitchell. Amazing group of guys that really kind of helped form me. Unfortunately, I was young when I did that, literally 18 when I started working at the fire department. So I think that shaped me in quite a few ways mentally on some things, and ended up changing me in quite a few ways I had to work through as well. But I realized I wanted to expand on that. So I ended up going up to college in a little town called East Grand Forks, Minnesota. Basically, Grand Forks, North Dakota, on the Minnesota side of the river.
Okay.
Lived in Grand Forks, went to school in East Grand Forks, and got my associate's degree in paramedicine out there.
Okay, cool.
And then came back to Mitchell, worked at the fire department again as a paramedic and firefighter for Mitchell Department of Public Safety Fire and EMS Division is what they are. Like I said, they cover an amazing amount of area for their town. They're only one of a handful of full-time fire departments in South Dakota. So those guys train hard. They work hard. They're a great group of guys down there, and a lot of new faces down there too. But they are, from what I understand, it's just a great department still. So I'm really proud that I had the chance to work with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I went through some things also working through them. Went through some rough times, some dark places in my mind, and so that's when I decided to come out to Colorado, was after doing that. But as far as college goes, the college experience was fun. living in a town where hockey is king, with the University of North Dakota up there. A lot of great games to go to. And North Dakota is, again, another rural state, but amazing people up there,
Absolutely,
too. Just some of the nicest people on earth. So college was a great experience. Made a lot of good friends. Had a lot of good experiences. Going through paramedic school, paramedic internships. Worked with a lot of great paramedics and firefighters, too. So college is a great experience. Again, looking back on it, I don't know if I would have taken a different path, but I would have expanded my mind a little bit as far as what I could do with it instead of going back home and going back to what was comfortable.
Right.
Which I think is, we fall into that pattern a lot,
Absolutely.
going with what's comfortable. Because,
it's natural.
Yeah, it's easy. So looking back, I wish I would have changed some things up there, but again, I don't regret it.
For sure.
So yeah, that was kind of my intro into coming out to Colorado too. Is this was my escape from some of those things that I was going through working back there and dealing with some of that. Because working in a small town, a lot of the people that you run into or come across or pick up in the ambulance. So that did some things to my head a little bit. So yeah, but coming out here, the mountains heal. So.
There's a couple things that I want to just touch on with what you just shared. Now, in regards to, going back to kind of finding yourself and things like that, was that first experience at the Mitchell Fire Department right out of high school, was that a little bit of, did that give you a little bit of clarity of kind of like who you wanted to be and become?
It showed me that. Basically, what it showed me is that I'm capable of being something that I wasn't sure I was capable of doing.
Beautiful.
And also, it showed me how much I love helping people.
Okay.
Too.
Cool.
The biggest thing that I was always, growing up in high school, I started realizing, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be the guy that people can count on when things go horribly wrong. And going through that and doing what I did, and testing myself through there and understanding that I can be that guy. I am that guy that when things go bad, I can keep my cool.
Powerful.
And I can be in control of my emotions in those situations. Yeah, it was a freeing experience. Finally, when it clicked, my first day there, I had a horrible call where a lady put her hand through a pane glass window, cut an artery, just blood everywhere. My first exposure to emergency medicine, and everything. I kept calm. I did exactly what I was supposed to. I helped out where I needed to be. And I realized I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to panic and run away or get scared and shake. And that was a very confidence building, freeing realization by doing that. Yeah.
Cool. Now, obviously, I'm from Iowa. I'm from the Midwest. I went to college and lived in South Dakota. So we have a lot of commonality there in regards to kind of probably a very similar home environments and school experiences and just the small town rural life. Right. We have a lot of commonalities. We have probably a lot that we can relate to in that, because just as you're talking a little bit about the small town life and things like that, kind of knowing people, like it's like I'm like yep. So with all of that being said, from my personal experience growing up in Iowa, living in South Dakota, being around the good old Midwest and kind of that mentality. And this is just kind of a recent discovery, to be truthful and transparent with you, Andy, is there's also a lot of limiting beliefs and limiting factors that I have found that were ingrained in my psyche from the time I was born up until very recently, when I'm really trying to break free from that and break through all of that. Have you kind of come to that realization as well, as like kind of like when you grew up specifically, and again, this is my personal experience, but I've talked to other people from the Midwest and they kind of agree with this. From your personal experience, have you found that there are a lot of kind of like limiting factors, limiting beliefs, limiting ideas that are implanted within our minds from birth, from that environment that we grew up in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that about back there that I was glad to break free of a little bit. I think there's the small town mentality also, is you grow up, you graduate high school, you go to college, you come back, you raise a family, you do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like if that's what makes you happy, absolutely.
For sure,
but I
for
think
sure.
that mindset is set in more in the rural areas because you got the farmers, the family farms need to keep going.
Absolutely.
Like those need to keep going too. And you've got the family-owned businesses in those small towns. They don't have the big chains of everything, so those got to keep going too. But I think there's again that comfortableness with going back home. But with that comes, and I don't like to use the word closed-mindedness, but not viewing the world as a whole, I guess.
Right.
Not viewing the world as all you see is that little piece of your world. You don't understand. I shouldn't say you don't understand, but you don't see what the whole world is doing.
Right.
And that does come with that does create some preconceived notions.
For
that
sure.
does, make people think about certain groups or certain people or certain lifestyles in a not positive way.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. But, I've also seen a lot of people break away from that. And have gotten away from that and have dropped those ideas and been very open, welcoming people to all kinds.
Yeah.
So it's something I think that does become a little bit ingrained in those small towns. And it's not done to be like a negative type of thing or anything like that. It's just the way that it is back there.
Yeah.
But it's also good to see that people realize that and can get out. And that people's minds are changed too. It's not like they leave that and are still set in that mindset.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some limiting factors for being raised in something like that. But then again, that takes you understanding who you are to know if you want to break away from that or if you want to come back to it either.
Yeah.
So
no, that's beautiful. To bring those together of knowing who you are and knowing yourself and knowing what you want your life to be on this earth. And I'm not speaking against anybody in the Midwest or anything like that.
No.
We're both from there. We're both very thankful for our time there and appreciative of our family that still lives there and all that. But these are just some truths that we have come to realize in our lives. And there's a lot of other people that I've talked to that have come to realize this. And I think it's important for us, and that's, to share our stories. And that's why I have the podcast, is for people, to share their story so that others can be like, hey, like I grew up in kind of similar, and maybe I need to start thinking about who I am and, some of these limiting beliefs and factors, because there's limiting factors. I don't care where you grew up in the world, there's always going to be those limiting factors,
Right.
But going back to the Midwest, it's kind of like that thing of like, this is the way it's always been done. This is the way you're expected to do it. And this is kind of the track for your life. And it's like, nobody has to live life that way if they don't want to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And like we talked about before we came on too, like I love being from there. Like I wouldn't want to have been raised anywhere else because it instilled a lot of great things in me. So
Absolutely.
I have no negative pieces about back home at all. It's just there's some things there that are different, and that will always be a little bit different. And that wasn't about me. That wasn't what I wanted to be about. So that's why I left. That's why we're out here. So
for sure.
Yeah,
cool.
Sorry for bringing 2 more transplants, Colorado.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of us. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I there's something else that I want to talk about, if you don't mind talking about. You said kind of like your experience post high school with the fire department. Then you went off to college, got your associate's degree. You came back to the fire department. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now you mentioned in there when you're kind of unpacking that there was maybe some dark times, some struggles that you went through. Is there, if you don't mind sharing, maybe just one of those things that you kind of had to work through during that time period, just so that we can kind of just get a better understanding of you and then working our way up to where you're at today.
Yeah, no, I want to try and be an open book, so hopefully somebody can learn something from me. If I can just help one person out, I'd be happy to. Working in a small town like that, like I said, a lot of people. I also did when I was in college and going through paramedic. My paramedic internship was brutal, which it is. Like, you look at what residents go through in med school, and that crushes what any paramedic internship is. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of rough calls when I was on my paramedic internship. Just a lot of you're around death and destruction a lot. And being a young kid, I was 20. I was 18 when I started. Basically 16 when I started in high school, and then 20, through 21 is when I got through my paramedic internship. It got to me. It got in my head. You learn how to compartmentalize doing something like that. You learn how to push your emotions down and not let them affect you, because especially in that environment, it's it's a tough environment. Like, you need to be tough. You need to be mentally tough. And thank God things are changing nowadays. You have like the Code Green campaign and stuff like that. We're looking at our first responders for PTSD and suicide and stuff like that. And God bless the work that those guys do, because there's more police officers, firefighters, and EMTs committing suicide all the time.
For sure, yeah.
It's an epidemic. So, it's sad to know that there's so many out there. But for me, I shut myself down. I became really cold, really hard, didn't show emotion, drank a lot. I definitely had what some people would call a problem. Being 21, 22, that's what you do is when you're not working, you're drinking.
Especially in a small town.
Especially in a small town.
It's even worse,
we have more
right?
bars than churches in town. It's one of those situations.
For sure.
So I went through some really rough times out there, and my mom recognized it, thank God. I was kind of teetering on the edge there for a while. I almost didn't feel human, I guess is the best way of putting it. And she recognized it and said, we need to get you out of here. So I turned in, one of the most sporadic things I ever done. I turned in my resignation, so I'm going to Colorado and moved out here and stayed with some family. And you can heal yourself. Like, you can, if you're going through rough times, you need to sometimes reset. You need to sometimes take that minute or take a year, take 2 years, because there's always an excuse not to. There's always like, well, I've got a good job. The job doesn't matter if your mind's not right or if you're not healthy in yourself. So I'm glad that I took that time to come out here and reset and just kind of take on a less stressful job. Like, I'm not afraid to say I came out here and went from, riding on ambulances and fire trucks to waiting tables and bartending, because I needed that.
For sure, for sure.
I needed to get away from the things that put that shell on me. And being young doing it, I know there's a lot of young EMTs and young paramedics out there. And looking back at my situation, I just wasn't mentally ready to do that. I thought I was, when you're 18, 19, you're bulletproof and
for sure,
you have no issues, you're tough. And then it fires back at you, and when it does, it's brutal. So like, if I could give advice to like any of the young paramedics or EMTs out there, just take care of yourself. Don't burn yourself out. Like, make sure that you have a good outlet. Make sure you have somebody to talk to. Anything. Because it wears on you over time.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I had a great family. My mom's an amazing woman and recognized that in me, and was the one that kind of forced me to say, hey, you need to take a step back, or this is going to kill you, literally.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. That's what I had to do. And it was the best decision I've ever made.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I'd be alive today if my mom hadn't recognized that and said, you need to go to the mountains, you need to go to Colorado. So
wow.
Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, and I'm happy, I'm happy to talk to anybody about it, because even if it's not like first responder related, like if somebody's going through something crappy in their life, it's good to have somebody to talk to. Because keeping that all in, it's just going to end up exploding, and then you're the one that pays for it. So.
Yeah. Well, it's internally, it's just toxic, and it eats at you.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So I appreciate that transparency, Andy. So you mentioned your move out to Colorado now, and you did mention you lived with some family when you first moved out here. So. And I believe, if I remember correctly, before we turned on the mic, you said that you guys had traveled out here when you were growing up. Is that correct? So was that there was family out here? You've been out to Colorado. You kind of knew what Colorado's all about. So why don't you just share a little bit about your first kind of like when you first moved out here, and then let's start sharing and talking about kind of like moving up to some of those first experiences and where you're at today.
Yeah, moving out here at first, my mindset was I got to get working, I got to get something established out here. So,
right.
For the first couple of years, I really was kind of dormant and stale out here. It was hanging out with friends and doing stuff in town. But I always, ever since I was a kid when I came out here, like the mountains are why I came out here.
For sure.
We have family, of course, but like I loved coming out here because I'd see Pikes Peak in the distance and I would just instantly like get happy. Like it's almost like you could feel it coming. But when I first moved out here, I was still in that mindset of you got to work, you got to go do that. You can't take care of yourself. So that's what I did. I worked a couple jobs at a time, and then I really just started feeling like I needed something more. So my first experience was really just going up in like Cheyenne Canyon and hiking these beautiful trails that this city maintains for us. And the first time like I absolutely knew that my heart needs to be in the mountains is that first drive up Cheyenne Canyon. It's just absolutely stunning. The big rock walls, the tunnels coming down the gravel road, like coming from flat prairie land, South Dakota, you know, this is Disneyland for me. This is absolutely amazing. And that was my first real experience of just like knowing that this is where I need to be. Like this is where I felt comfortable. Mm-hmm. So I started getting up in the mountains more and hiking, just taking, you know, the hardest part about getting into the mountains or hiking is doing it, like getting up and actually doing it. Sounds great to look up at the mountains and be like, I'm going to climb that one day and point at this peak. Yeah. You got to get out and do it. And then once you get doing it, like that first hike, like getting off the couch and driving there, that's the hardest part. Because once you start hiking, you realize how beautiful it is and how amazing this area is. So I just started pushing myself to do it more and more, and then I just wanted to keep exploring deeper and going more and saying, what's that like up there? I want to climb that, you know? Yeah. And that's where my love of the mountains really, really started, was a single drive up Cheyenne Canyon one day just because I was bored. And yeah, I mean, I've snowboarded all over the place when I was younger, and I knew I loved the mountain, but just getting that actual feeling and feeling that comfortableness is, absolutely amazing.
So when you first moved out here, was it here to Colorado Springs then? Or?
Yep, it was. I've been in Colorado Springs for 15 years.
Oh,
now.
wow.
Yeah, cool. So I moved out here and came to Colorado Springs. Didn't really know anybody in Denver or anything like that, so had family here. This seemed like the right place.
Yeah.
Also having the mountain in the background, you know. But you know, everybody's asked me why haven't you moved to Denver or Boulder or Boynton, you know, some of these more outdoor towns, I guess, for lack of better terms. And Springs is a good base camp. You know, it's good access to the mountains. We've got a 14,000 foot peak in our backyard. You know, we've got great training areas. So I love it here. You know, I'm not afraid to explore maybe going someplace else. But as far as like a place that I call home, Colorado's it. You know, I'll stay in Colorado more than likely. You know, that may change because life changes, so I'm not going to ever put a seal on it and say that's the down foot, you know. But yeah, I love Colorado, and it's become my surrogate home, I guess, for the best part. But yeah, I've been in Colorado Springs the whole time. I've got a great community built up around me around here, great friends, and that's, you know, like we were talking about earlier. This whole state is so great because it's very active, very outdoorsy, and when you get into some of these sub communities, like climbers and, you know, mountaineers and bikers and stuff like that, like they all have the same end goal, and that's just to get out and enjoy the outdoors. It's so good. Yeah, having such like-minded people around you and people that, it's not even that, but the people around here are so supportive. It seems like, you know, nobody rags on, well, people do rag on but for the most part, like if you're out to have a big objective or a big goal, people are going to help you get there because they want to see you succeed, which is so refreshing too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen that through, I mean, I've you know, getting close to 50 in-person interviews and conversations, I like to call them, for my podcast. It's like, these people are just like, there's such a like-mindedness, there's such an openness, supportiveness. It's like, it's amazing because like when I first started reaching out to people, it's like, dude, I was just like, I'm a school teacher. I want to do this podcast, and like, you know, people are like, people that have like thousands of followers on Instagram, people that have, you know, their own businesses, professional athletes, all this stuff. I'm like, they're spending time with me, and it's just like, again and again and again, I've come in contact with these type of people through the podcast, and then obviously being in this Colorado Springs community for almost 2 years. And then, you know, I've been in Denver and Boulder. It's just like, it's just amazing, man.
It is, and it's so nice to see, because that breeds more. You know, kindness breeds kindness, and support breeds support. So, you know, somebody new coming into one of these situations or one of these communities, and they see the support, you know, they may be initially a little introverted and doesn't speak out, but as they're around that, it warms them, and then they become part of that support group, and then it just makes bigger groups of kind people and supportive people, and I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Oh man, I think that's a pretty awesome deal.
Yeah, well, as human beings, like we've evolved, or we were created, however you want to word that, or however you believe all of that type of stuff. But you know, we were made to have community. You know, if you look back to like the caveman years and all of our evolution, it's like, dude, we were always in tribes, we were always in groups, always in communities. And, I say this a lot, but it's so true. Because of technology, Andy, we are more connected worldwide than like throughout the history of mankind, but also, and you spoke on, kind of like the suicide with the EMTs, and that's a whole separate thing, but, the depression, the ADD, the anxiety, all these different kind of issues that we have going on culturally and in our society, we are more disconnected than probably ever throughout human history because of the technology, because all of our communication, all of our human interaction is through the technology, it's through a screen. And that's cool, it's powerful, I like it, I love it, I use it to my advantage, all that type of stuff. You can use it for positivity, but we need to be face to face with other human beings. Right. We need that camaraderie that you spoke of earlier in regards to your life and kind of being, I think, in that fire department setting. We need people to uplift us and to help us out when we're down, and we need to be serving and helping, which we're going to talk more about here in a minute. Yeah. We need to be helping other people because that's in our DNA, man.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The human connection, human connection makes things better.
Absolutely.
Being able to look at somebody in the eye, being able to understand their tone, and not even that, I've had experiences where I've just sat next to somebody and just having that person sit next to you, if you're, whatever you're going through, being there, just knowing that human is there to support you if you need them.
For sure.
It's an amazing thing, and people are so quick to post on Facebook, happy birthday, but we don't call people anymore to wish them happy birthday.
No, we don't.
We don't, and it even just something like that can make somebody's day.
Absolutely.
Writing something on their Facebook, yeah, they get a like out of it, but, actually taking the time to call somebody and say happy birthday, or, when you see them, stop them and say, hey, man, happy birthday, I know it was last week, just taking that time to make that human connection, even if it's for 30 seconds, will brighten somebody's day.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so I want to touch on, we've been going for 51 minutes already, but there's a few more things, Andy, before we kind of go in for the landing for this conversation that I want to touch on. And one of them is you mentioned, I believe earlier you talked about going over to, was it Nepal for a time? Yeah. So we've the big picture of this conversation is kind of the exploration and human connection and finding ourselves. So would you just share with myself and the listeners, please, a little bit about that experience in Nepal, and then have there been some other places outside the United States that you visited that you want to touch on as well? Go ahead.
Yeah, please. Absolutely. So with full transparency, I went through a divorce about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And right around that time, again, another time where you need to figure out some things and figure out who you are as a person. So I decided I've always wanted to go to Nepal. It's always been a dream of mine. And I decided, you know what, now is as good a time as any. So I one night at 3 a.m, I started doing some Google searching, and by 5 a.m, I had booked a flight to Kathmandu. I picked a date, booked a flight to Kathmandu, and in that same course, I'd signed up to do 2 weeks of medical volunteering over there as well as an EMT. Okay. And I figured, if I'm going to be over there, I might as well just take some time, might as well make a trip out of it. So I also decided to do the base camp trek for Everest and do some climbing over there as well. So I was over in Nepal for a total of 5 weeks.
Okay.
Last year. So originally, what it started out as is flew from New York to Dubai on a 12-hour flight, which is awesome. And then got into Kathmandu. Flying into Kathmandu, you see Everest from the airplane, which is right there instantly. My pulse goes up, my palms start sweating. Now, I just want to clarify, I didn't climb Everest. I'm not an Everest summiter. Maybe someday if I get $80,000 and they get some things figured out up there. But flying into Kathmandu was an absolute out of my comfort zone experience. So just kind of set the stage. You fly in, a lot of open burning fires in Kathmandu. So you fly in, sun setting, and it looks like wildfires do out in Colorado. Or red sun, just smoke in the sky type of situation. Yeah. And then you get put into a taxi cab, and I don't know if anybody, I'm sure people listening to this have been over there, but there's no traffic laws in Kathmandu. They drive based off of karma. So if they let somebody go in front of them, next time that person will let them go. So I get thrown in this cab in the middle of the night, driving through Kathmandu with headlights coming at me the wrong side of the road. We're swerving in and out of traffic. And the first thought that goes through my head is, I'm going to die the first 50 minutes I'm in Kathmandu. Thankfully I didn't, though. And I met up with my team that we're going to be going in the medical trek with, a team called Trek T Himalaya, out of Kathmandu, and our leader was this gentleman named Steve Trude, a paramedic from Australia.
Okay.
So first thing I meet is this big, huge Australian that says, "Hey, let's go get a beer down at the bar." Sorry if I offended anybody with my Australian accent, by the way. I mean, I met the rest of my medical team, amazing people from England, France, Australia, Italy. I'm sorry, not France. Italy, Canada. We had nurses, doctors, and then a team from Kathmandu with pharmacists. So we traveled over to the Annapurna area, which is on the west side of Nepal, closer to India. And we did 10 days of trekking over there, around 5 to 10 miles a day. And then the next day we would set up clinics. And we would treat about 300 patients a day from all the villages around the area. And a lot of times these are the first time these people have seen healthcare professionals in years or ever. These villages are a 2-3 day walk from any type of hospital care over there. So we treated 300 a day, and we had, I believe, 5 clinics, something like that. So we saw some amazing people and met some of the most beautiful people you could ever imagine. Absolutely. The Nepali people are absolutely amazing. They welcomed us to all of their villages with ceremonies, flowers. I have a picture, I think, on my Instagram of my head stained with the powder from the blessings from each of the villages, and just so appreciative. Even if we couldn't do anything for them because we were limited on supplies, they would just absolutely love what we did for them. So did that for 2 weeks. Just felt great to get out, help people, do that, and then I took the selfish part of my trip and flew into the world's most dangerous airport, Lukla, which is on the side of a mountain, basically. There's a cliff in front of the runway and a mountain behind it. So we flew into Lukla, and that was a start to the trek to Everest.
Okay.
When I was doing this, I knew I wanted to climb a big peak over there. I didn't fly all halfway around the world to not climb something.
For sure. Yeah.
So I also signed up for a climb of it's called a trekking peak over there. It's named Island Peak. It's 20,305 feet. So big peak, but a lot of steep ice climbing, stuff like that. So went over and did the trek, and I did the trek by myself. I had a guide and a porter just because my first time over there. I want to make sure I didn't get lost in the Himalaya. But I spent a lot of time alone on that. For 2 weeks, basically, I spent alone on the trail. And you want to talk about having time to think about stuff. Sitting in a tea house in Namche Bazaar at 3 a.m, wide awake, knowing you're halfway around the world from anybody you know or love.
For sure.
Gives you a lot of time to sit and think, and then also knowing that you're staring at some of the most beautiful mountains in the world. It was probably one of the most healing, if not the most healing experience I could have gone through. And again, it wasn't just about being in nature. It was the people there. We talked about community. That's all they care about. Your neighbors, your family. I got invited into people's huts that I had literally been talking to for 5 minutes for tea. Like, they just appreciate people and care about you genuinely. So yeah, it was an amazing trip. I ended up climbing Kalapatar, which was about 18,000 feet. Got to see some amazing things. Got to see Everest Base Camp. Got to climb. I ended up summiting Island Peak, which almost didn't. Got Giardia the day before.
What's that?
Giardia is a GI bug where you basically have fluids coming out of both ends.
That sucks.
Yeah. I got that the night before I was supposed to climb. I was supposed to head that base camp for Island Peak. So I don't know if you've ever been to Asia, but squat toilets. Over in Asia, squat toilets are a big thing. Okay, so it's basically a big hole in the ground.
Okay.
So I spent 8 hours in a squat toilet the night before I was supposed to hike 7 miles at like 16,000 feet. Right. But I made it to base camp, woke up, and this was probably the reason I bring this up is Island Peak was probably the most mentally and physically challenging thing I've ever done. Just because I was ill.
Right.
Had a lot going on in my mind, coming off of some different things, but got up at midnight into rain or into freezing fog and snow, and climbed for 8 hours and summited. Almost got frostbite, dehydrated, and when I stood on top of that mountain, I cried. Like it was like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders from everything that had been happening in the last year and a half of my life. So that exploration, like we were talking about, exploring an area that I was not comfortable in, or not, I shouldn't say not comfortable in, but knew nothing about other than what I could read, other than what I could research, and putting myself out there by myself, was an absolutely healing and peaceful process for me. I went through a lot of turmoil, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering while I was doing it, but looking back on it, it was the most absolute peaceful time I've ever had.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So going out and exploring what's uncomfortable for you to explore can change your life.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so important for people to step out of their comfort zone.
100%.
Get out of, get off the couch, get outside, go play, go climb that mountain that you've always looked at. If you don't know how to do it, again, our group UpaDowna, we take people doing that.
Sure.
So we take you on hikes. We'll help you out with that information. Please come to us. We want to get you out there because the group that I work for, we understand how important being outside is and how healing it is for the mind and the body. So we want to try and facilitate in any way whatsoever that we can get you outside too. Yeah. So that's what drew me to this group as well. Yeah. Is they get it. I guess is the best way of putting it.
Right.
And coming back from my trip, I got it even more than I thought I would ever have gotten it. So yeah, getting out exploring, it's vital for your mental, physical health, and just for your soul. Like,
absolutely,
it just makes your soul at peace.
I think going back to kind of the, talking about being in our DNA, that exploration is something else that I believe firmly it's in our DNA.
Yeah,
it's very, very necessary, along with the community aspect of things and movement and just fresh air. It's in our DNA. It's so necessary.
Absolutely.
So, now, you just mentioned UpaDowna, and I want to talk about that here in a minute. But just one thing, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners and myself, Andy, you talked about going through the divorce, and then you went over to Nepal and just had this amazing experience, even though it was very difficult and hard. But what's maybe one, and if there's more than one, that's you feel free to share, but just maybe one thing that you really, really, really took away from that experience that is it's with you today, and it's going to continue to stay with you until your time is up on this earth.
I talked about like happiness and kindness, and that's what I took away from that is everybody over there was so kind, and over there they don't have a lot. They don't have computers. They don't have PlayStations and Xboxes and all the things that we take advantage and take for granted of here.
For sure.
And they were some of the happiest people that you could ever meet. Just happy to meet you, happy to hear your story, happy to talk to you. So the thing I took away from that is, kindness and happiness goes hand in hand. And if you can't, and this kind of comes from the book, the Art of Happiness that I was reading over there too. If you can't, the biggest piece I took away is if you can't be kind to somebody, at least cause them no harm. Kindness is always the best option, but just be good to people. I met, Buddhist monks. I met, yak ranchers, Sherpa that were carrying stuff up to Everest Base Camp. I met professional climbers over there that were getting ready to summit Everest that year. And everybody was kind. Everybody was happy to be doing what they were doing. And everybody was happy to meet you. And I think that's how I want to approach people. I don't want to come up and be like annoyed that somebody wants to talk to me. I want to talk to them. I want to hear your story because we can learn from so many, from every other person. Nobody walks the same line in life. For sure. And if you're kind and happy and appreciate hearing those stories, you're going to learn a lot more than, sitting on Facebook, sitting on Instagram, and trying to read a little quote or a little snippet from somebody showing them sitting somewhere. It's great because those things push you to explore. They make you almost FOMO, have that fear of missing out. You're like, I gotta check this out too. Awesome, get out and check it out.
Yeah.
But do it for you. Don't do it because you saw it.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think my biggest thing is treat people well, treat people good. Yeah.
That's a powerful takeaway, and just. As we've been going for an hour now just with our conversation, there's a couple things that continue to come up. One of them is kind of the exploration thing, but we've talked a lot about knowing who we are, finding out who we are, and things of that nature. And just as I've listened to your story and never met you in person before today, this thing of happiness seems to be kind of like you found yourself and kind of your focus and your passion in life through just the pursuit of happiness and trying to make other people happy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It took me finding my happiness first.
Absolutely,
And now that now I know what makes me happy, I want part of my life is I want to try and help people find their happiness. I may not be able to do that. I may not be able to find, because this is what I know makes me happy. And if I can take you out and show you what makes me happy, if that works for you, awesome. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like a bumbling fool just bouncing around and skipping all the time. I have bad days, just like everybody else. But it's the bad days are a lot better, are a lot easier when you're truly happy. Yeah. And if I have the ability, whether it's taking one person out on a paddleboard or taking one person hiking or showing them how to rock climb a city rock, and that puts a smile on their face and they find happiness in that, that's all worth it at that point. Cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's start wrapping things up here with just you being the program director of UpaDowna. What is UpaDowna? What do you guys do? And then also, if somebody wants to get involved or connect, just how can people do that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So UpaDowna is an outdoor nonprofit in Colorado Springs here. It was started by a gentleman named Steve Hitchcock. Great guy, absolutely amazing. Veteran. So he originally started as a meetup group, just going up, doing on hikes, and the name originally meant up a mountain, down a beer. Okay. So they go out, hike, drink a beer afterwards, which is amazing. But then they saw something bigger in this. Him and his wife, Randy, probably two of the most amazing people I ever meet. These people are the reason that UpaDowna is around today. But what they saw is a need for people that may not have access to gear, may not have access to outdoors in ways that can get them out there. So basically what they did is they started this nonprofit, and what the mission is, it's basically to provide access to outdoor adventures for all. We have events and programs that empower individuals and create healthier communities and also foster respect for the environment. So we do these things, we basically want to make it available to everybody. One of the biggest things I've ever noticed with people that don't get outdoors is it's intimidating. Where do I go hiking for the first hike? What if I get lost? So we, I don't have the right gear for that. We provide all that. We provide the guidance. We provide the programs. Like, for example, one of the ones that I actually volunteered with before I was hired on with UpaDowna is we have an intro to climb night at City Rock. City Rock's been an amazing partner for us. And they allow us to bring in once a month, 10 climbers. They provide dinner through the Ute and Yeti, which is an amazing restaurant in downtown Colorado Springs, built into the climbing gym, which is even better. Cool. Yeah, and they have, great food, great beer, a great staff. My friend Matt is the manager there, and he is probably one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Cool. So we provide that for you. It's free of charge. We ask for donations because we're a nonprofit. That's what keeps us going. But we provide that free of charge. Last weekend, I took a group of people up to Catamount Ranch, which is a newer area on the north slope of Pikes Peak that opened a few years ago. And it was foggy and rainy when we first started, and then the clouds opened up and gave us the most beautiful day, and people just smiled. And that's what the outdoors does, and we realize that, and we want to get more people out there and help them. And also by doing that, especially anymore with the environment, that's our playground. So with getting more people involved in the outdoors, it builds more stewards for making sure that our public lands are taken care of, and that there's more people that are willing to stand up when somebody says, hey, we need to close this down for drilling or something like that, and says, we don't need to do this in this beautiful part of the country. Right. And with me being an outdoors guy, I'm big on renewable resources, things like that. So I'm all for it. I know there's a livelihood for some people, the oil industry, and that's not lost on me either, but we need to figure out a way. This planet, we only got one planet. We need to figure it out. So that's a big push with us too, is making sure that we can keep this planet nice, keep this state beautiful, so we can continue to go out and enjoy it as well. But yeah, UpaDowna is one of these groups that wants to just make sure that people get out and have a good time, and like I said, for mental and physical well-being.
That's beautiful. Man.
Yeah, it's a great mission. I believe in the mission 100%. And we try and inspire too. We have people come in and do talks in our Adventure on Tap. Cool. They talk about everything from summiting Everest to rafting the Grand Canyon to biking the Colorado Trail. So we get these people in that may show you something that you necessarily didn't think you could do, and then by seeing them talk about it, like, oh, this could be something I could do, and again, pushes that exploration envelope as well, and that adventure envelope. So
that's great. Now, if somebody wants to volunteer, or if somebody wants to donate, if somebody wants to get involved with UpaDowna, what does that process look like?
Best way to get involved with us is to go to our website. It's UpaDowna.org. It's UpaDowna.org. And we have a donate button. We have a contact us through there. Also, if you just want to come to our events, Facebook is our huge thing there. We actually started as a Facebook group.
Perfect.
And our executive director, Randy, was actually out at Facebook headquarters this year. They're honoring the small groups that kind of started with Facebook. So Facebook's a big piece for us, and you can go on there, see all of our events, and then some of our events require waivers, and you can fill those out online as well. So that's going to be your best bet. Facebook and UpaDowna.org. We're also on Instagram as well at UpaDowna. Okay,
cool. Now, did I hear you correctly? For people that get to participate in UpaDowna and these explorations and adventures, it's free for them?
Yeah, most of our programs are. We do on occasion do field trips. Like a couple months ago, it was National Parks Day, so we did a field trip to Florissant National Fossil Bed monument up there. And the only thing we had to pay is we got a shuttle to drive everybody up there. So you help split the cost of the shuttle, which was very minimal. I'm looking to expand out some programs, and we're looking to make some more advanced programs instead of just these beginner levels. Looking at maybe doing some 14er hikes, some outdoor rock climbing, and with that comes more higher liability. It comes with some things where we would need payment on there, but 99.9% of our programs are absolutely free.
That's awesome, man.
We ask for donations, but we don't require anybody to pay anything. Absolutely.
Now, in regards to like schools and stuff, have you worked with schools in regards to kind of like field trip type stuff, or what does that kind of look like for a school that might be interested in getting involved?
We actually work through a program called Generation Wild, so we've done work with different schools. Our big program for Generation Wild is our stand-up paddleboarding. We do free stand-up paddleboarding out at Prospect Lake quite often, but we also do these private groups as well. And we take these kids out on these paddleboards that have never been out on water, have never been on a paddleboard, and just let them go. And
cool.
We provide rescuers out in the water. We provide the paddleboards, the life jackets, everything. Usually all you need to bring is some water, just a drink. But yeah, we provide everything, and we get these kids out there. And like I said earlier, we had that one kid that the teacher said hadn't smiled in 2 years, and get him out of paddleboard, that's what did it for him. And, that's why we do this. That's why we do these for free, is because that you can't pay for an impact like that on somebody.
Right, for sure.
And we wouldn't want somebody to pay to have that impact happen for them. We want that to come organically for them.
I love that, man. And I told you before we turned on the mic that was a big reason why I reached out to you and wanted you to be on my podcast, is because of kind of this UpaDowna. I was looking into it a little bit on Facebook and stuff, and I was like, this is like right up my alley, man, because it's like there's so many people that have limited resources, whether that's financially or educationally. But if we can just kind of get them back into kind of nature and tied into what's inside of them in regards to their DNA, like it's so powerful, man. So that's I appreciate you sharing about all that, because that's something, that was a big impetus behind me asking you to be on the podcast, is just to talk about kind of the UpaDowna and what you guys provide and what you do within the community. And again, going back to Colorado Springs and then the whole state, man, there's so many different organizations like that. There's so many people that they just want to help. They just want to serve. It's not about the money. It's not about the Insta fame or all this craziness. It's just about simply loving other human beings. So.
Absolutely. And we recognize that too. Like, we see these other groups out here, and we're so happy that they're out there, because we all have the same goal in mind.
For sure.
And, UpaDowna, we can't be everywhere. Right. We need these other groups out here to get people out, because, like I said, it's just not us. It's all these other groups out there, whether it's, a small one-person nonprofit or these huge groups like Access Fund that protect public lands,
Right.
Every little bit helps to protect these areas that make us happy and allow us to go out and explore. So, we're happy to be part of this community that's doing this for the public. It's absolutely great.
Beautiful. Now, just a couple more things to touch on here, Andy, and then we'll finish here.
Okay.
But you are a landscape and adventure photographer. So why don't you share a little bit about that and just kind of like your passion or the importance of photography for you personally in your life?
Yeah, landscape and adventure photography. I use that term loosely.
Okay.
It's a hobby, definitely.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to get published in a couple of places. But I'm very torn with the photography thing sometimes, because I very much want to be present in the moment and appreciate what's going on. But a lot of times I get to go to such beautiful places, and my fun takes me to these beautiful places. I want to capture it, if anything, to inspire other people to try and go out and find beautiful places. I also like it because my photography is my perspective on the world. It's how I see it. And if people appreciate how I see it, that it's a nice thing. It's a valid. I shouldn't say it's a validating thing, but it's nice to be appreciated for your point of view on some things. Yeah. I've been lucky enough to be able to get some amazing climbing photographer. I've got a friend in town here named Adam. He's an amazing climbing photographer. Got to do some work with the ice climbing thing up in Denver, so we've got to go on some adventures together. But also, and this isn't mean to sound arrogant or anything, but I do some pretty fun, cool stuff. Yeah. And it's fun to capture that, man, sure. It's fun to have those memories. Absolutely. Where I'm torn with the photography is the with the social media that comes with it, because I want to share it, but also I kind of, and it's not protecting these areas, but there's some things that I do, and there's some things that I do with my friends that not everybody should be out doing. They may not have the skills or the gear or the equipment, and putting that out there sometimes makes people jump a step ahead. Yeah, for sure. So there's that safety aspect as well. So I'm torn about, because I want people to get out and explore. I want them to see these beautiful places, but also I don't want them to get into trouble and get hurt either. But the photography, that's my artistic expression. Cool. I love it. Yeah, that's, I try to paint, I try to draw. It doesn't look good. So Mother Nature makes a great thing. I'm pretty lucky. I just have to push a button and it turns out great. Right. So, yeah. But yeah, that's my way of getting my artistic expression out. Yeah. Okay. I think climbing is very artistic as well, but definitely like taking pictures, editing photos. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my artistic side. No. In regards to like the photography, if somebody, do people sometimes hire you to take pictures and things like that, or if they wanted to, how can that happen? You can get a hold of me. I've got a website, and AndyBrinkmanImages.com. It's just basically a portfolio site. Okay. But you can contact me through there, and I'll get an email. Or just find me on Facebook. Andy Brinkman, or at Andy in the Alpine on Instagram. Okay. Those have all my photography on there. I mean, I'm happy to sell prints. I don't push selling prints. I don't have like a shop on my thing, but we can definitely, if you want to buy a print or have me take a picture. I don't do a lot of people pictures. It's not my thing, really. Yeah. But yeah, if you're interested in checking out my photography, please. Instagram, my website, Facebook, all that. Perfect. Now, two questions left here. Mm-hmm. The second to last one is what's and this is kind of a broad, it's a broad question, and I know it might be kind of hard to answer, but to the best of your ability, what has been the greatest life lesson for you that you've learned up to this point? Yeah, that's a good question. And when you sent me these, I looked at it and I've been thinking about it for like 2 weeks. Right, yeah. And I still don't know if I have an absolute answer on it. I think we're always learning lessons. Absolutely. And I think, that might be the life lesson, is to always be learning through life, because you may think you know everything today and tomorrow will slap you in the face. Mm-hmm. And it will, it'll humble you again. I enjoy being humbled because it makes me learn more. Absolutely. Honestly, my life lesson is nothing's ever expected. So just take it one day at a time, and just keep learning, keep improving yourself. Yeah. Cool. All right. So the last question, Andy, is what sets your soul on fire? Yeah. I just think of just being up. What sets my soul on fire is being up on a mountain, feeling that wind hit my face, smelling and tasting that air, a little hypoxia doesn't hurt either when you're up at altitude. It makes that euphoric effect. But no, getting on an objective, getting on something that scares me, and being able to do it, and being able to do it, while being scared, but having a solid mind and pushing your body and knowing your body is performing at its limit, pushing the edge and knowing that you're performing at your mental limit, like that lights me up. Like that makes me content in life, and that's what puts a smile on my face. Love it, man. Love it. So, Andy, that finishes kind of our conversation at this point for the podcast. So I personally just want to thank you for taking time out of your day and your schedule to spend with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being open and real and transparent. Definitely
I was just thinking as you were kind of answering that last question, this was a very thorough and just well covered conversation interview. So thank you very much.
I appreciate you asking me. I was a little surprised when you asked me at first, because I'm like, I don't know what he wants to talk to me about. But I'm glad you did, man. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. So I know you've kind of already mentioned the social media contacts and stuff. Is there anything else, or if you want to just kind of throw out the Facebook and Instagram one more time for the listeners, or if there's anything else that you want to share just in regards to contacts or websites, things like that, please feel free to do that right now.
Yeah, here's all my plugs, I guess. So first off, the nonprofit that I work for, please check them out. Please come to our events. We love having as many people as possible. If you like what you see, donate. We want to keep providing these for you. So come to UpaDowna.org. Again, we're on Facebook at UpaDowna and on Instagram at UpaDowna. So check us out there. If you're interested in my personal life, just don't stalk me too hard. But no, you'll see the beard and you'll be like, no, I'm not following this guy.
Chicks dig the beard, though, especially out in Colorado, man, don't they?
Yeah, it's just the salt and pepper beard a little bit. So I'm Andy Brinkman on Facebook. Feel free to follow me or friend request me on there. I like seeing what other people are doing in the world. It's awesome. Yeah, it is. And then at Andy and the Alpine on Instagram. That's basically my photography page, and andybrinkmanimages.com is my website. But yeah, I mean, come out, meet me. You can take a look at my stuff, but come to one of my events, meet me. I love talking with new people. Cool, I love getting people's stoke levels really high on getting the outdoors. And if it's something that UpaDowna can't provide and you're curious about, I personally have done more things than I need to in the outdoors, so I have a lot of knowledge on that. So come talk to me. I'll be happy to discuss stuff with you. Beautiful.
And I know you mentioned this earlier, and I want to just quickly touch on this again, Andy, in regards to EMTs out there. If you're listening to this, you're an EMT, you have a husband, wife, family member, friend, what have you, that's an EMT, and maybe you or somebody that's maybe going through some dark times right now, they're going through some struggles. They're more than welcome to reach out to you as well, correct?
Reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I don't work in the streets anymore. I work in an ER, but I've worked in the streets for a long time. And sometimes you just need somebody to listen.
Absolutely.
I've been through stuff. I know what the dark places feel like. I'm not going to judge. I'll be there to listen. If it keeps you around and gives us an opportunity to get you professional help, which I am not, I will sit there and listen to you as long as you absolutely need me to.
Perfect.
So please feel free to reach out. And then also the Code Green campaign is an amazing campaign out there too that helps our first responders.
Very good, very good. All right, so listeners, I just want to thank you once again for hanging out with Andy and myself on the 127 Fit podcast. Your time is just greatly appreciated because we all live kind of wild, crazy, busy lives, and for you to hang out for well over an hour and to listen to the podcast, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to reach out to me, connect with me, you can find me on Instagram at 127fitness, Facebook at Quentin Vars. If you are finding great value, which I know you are, in the guests and the content, the value that I'm providing through this podcast, please go to the Apple iTunes podcast app, leave a 5-star review. Make sure you just leave that comment as well. That is just very helpful in the podcast world. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance, coworker, what have you, that you think would be a great guest or guest, please send me an email. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. Just share a little bit about yourself, or give that email to your friend or your friends and just have them reach out to me, and we will take it from there. Again, if you're finding great value in the podcast, the people that I'm bringing on, a specific episode, if you would just start sharing these on your Facebook and Instagram stories. Again, just more exposure, more listeners means more people are being positively impacted, and that's the goal for everything that's going on with the 127 Fit podcast. So share those on your stories, the episode or episodes that you are really enjoying and finding value in. And then just use the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, Your strength is small. This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.